Hi, I'm Wayne from TC Electronics and Marine. This is a short video to show everyone how to pressure test an 800 series. It's a little bit different than a regular outboard because there's a shift cable attached, which is well up, and the end of it that goes into the there's two wires coming out, and the air will travel through these wires. So we have to contain the wires. But before we get ahead of ourselves, you're going to need a pressure testing unit, and this is one here, and it comes with a radiator cap test. Came from Princess Auto in Canada, but it's sold at almost every store, every auto store throughout the United States. If not, I'm sure they can order you one in. It's a cooling system pressure tester for the radiator to find out if you have any leaks. We use this at about 15 pounds, the blue mark. When you're testing it, you simply cut this off right around here, unless you want to cut it back a little in case you want to join it to actually use it for what it was made for, in case you need to pressure test a radiator one day. You then switch it. This is one that's done here. It's an older one that's been around here for quite a while, but you can see we just cut it, put it into this piece here. It's an adapter, and the adapter, the piece beside it, is called a lower unit pump for pumping oil. Okay. And basically what we have done here, the only changes we've made is on the top part here, I put a little bit of epoxy to stop the air from leaking out. Water doesn't leak, but air does from this unit, and we've cut the thread part a little bit shorter so that it bottoms out for testing against the O-ring. Same O-ring, but we've just cut it back about a quarter of an inch or so. Just enough that it will bottom out when you thread it in. And that's pretty much it for the pump. I think the price of the pump is around $59, and these oil pumps are around $6 or $7. Not really sure. We do sell the oil pump here, although I'm not involved in the pricing or shipping or anything like that. And also, while I'm at it, there's a drain screw here, and it has a magnet on the end, and it should be used at the bottom of the 800 or 400s. And when you install this, there's two sides to this. I hope we can see it here. One side has a steel, and the other side is fully covered with Teflon. We want the Teflon side facing the outdrive, and we want this side facing the top of the screw. So when it's on, it should look like this. And these work excellent. And this picks up all the metal filings as well. The part number on it, for anybody who needs one, is a 21731 drain screw. And that kind of sums up that part of it. The next part now is we need to cover this up. So what I have done previous times is just gone to Home Hardware. I think this is a 3/4 inch ID piece of, I think it's used for water. I'm not sure you need about 3 feet. You plug the end with whatever you want. At one of the other shops, a spark plug fits in here just perfectly, and then they put a clamp on it. But whatever, a bolt, we've got a bolt in there, and we cut the end off of it. maybe Home Depot even has a plug while you're there that you could grab that fits the end of it, but you need to plug one end, obviously. And then what you do is you take this piece here and you spray it with a soap, the same one you use for pressure testing, so you can see the bubbles if you have a leak. It's 50. What it is it's 50% water and 50% palm olive is what we're using, and we've transferred it into a Windex bottle so it makes it easier for us to spray it. If we're in a hurry, this is what we do. Normally we have 2 or 3 of these pumps, and we just leave them overnight when we're pressure testing something to make sure they're not leaking down. Can't really do it with the camera with one hand, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it with soap so that makes it easier to slide, and I'm going to slide that through this tube and get back to you. When you're sliding the hose over the shift cable, you're going to come to this area here, which is actually at the back of the boat. This is where it would go into the boat, and there would be a holding, there would be a spot to hold it there, a little clip. Just grabbing it here. Looks like this. So on the back of the boat there would have been a clip and a bolt holding this in. So this is on the inside of the boat from here on, and this part here will be on the outside of the boat. So we need to push this onto this area here and then clamp it up, because we're only worried about the part that's exposed, not what's inside the boat. Alright, earlier I think I mentioned that this was a 3/4 inch ID. It's not. The shift cable is about 625 or 628, even smaller, around 612, which means you should be able to use I think what you'll find is this is 5/8 ID is what we've used, and that means basically you could probably get away with using a garden hose. If you just have a piece of a garden hose around and you plug the end of it with something, that would work fine for slipping over top of the shift cable to seal it, stop the air from coming out. Okay, this is what it's going to look like once you've slidden it up. You slide the shift cable into the unit and then just clamp it up. This would be the same. This is a 400 series, but it doesn't matter. It would be the same all the way from 1978, even though the hose is a little bit different. Pressure testing would be the same. So 1978 all the way up to 85, and you see the odd one on some 86s. So pressure testing this shift cable would be the same. I might add at this point you need to make sure that the lower magnetic screw is placed in the lower drain hole on this unit. Put some grease on it before you put it in, and we're going to put the tester, which you may already have, or you may need to make one or purchase one. They do sell them already put together as well, but they're not very popular, so they're hard to get. It might be faster and easier and cheaper to just pick one up at the auto store. So in my case, what we've done is we placed a magnetic screw in the bottom. Okay, this area here just it was welded and it had a heavy impact damage here, and it was welded up, and this is primarily importance to us to make sure that it's not leaking here, that it's holding. If it does leak, I haven't actually tested it yet, so this is, you will see a bubble coming up if there is any leaks, and if there is, we would re-weld it, and just the little spot that's leaking. And if it is leaking, it will be a large bubble, similar to that of, you know, if you've ever seen somebody with one of those bubble pipes, it would be a large, like, 1/4 inch bubble, not to be confused with the soap that's running down the side. So I don't see any bubbles here. The next spot, a lot of times, believe it or not, is the area where we have the screw. Sometimes if you've got, by accident, if you've got 2 O-rings or spacers or whatever you want to call them, 2 of these in there, it will leak. You can only support 1. This is where sometimes it leaks here, where the tester, sometimes the tester breaks a lot right here from using it. It'll bubble up. We have a fair chunk of trouble with the testers because they sort of get caught on things or dropped, and we don't really have a place to sit them when we're testing it, so you know, we put them wherever. Next thing you know, you go to turn the unit and it ends on the floor. Okay, before you pressure test it, I should have told you to put a bolt or a screw in here, right here, because quite often this screw will come flying out. No big thing, you just put some more gasket compound on it. We didn't take this apart, so usually if they haven't been taken apart, they don't go flying out, but if you've got new gasket compound in there, it'll definitely fly out at you. So normally you just put something in front to stop this screw here from coming out when you pressure test it. When the unit's together, there's a bolt there, so you don't have to worry about it. So the spots quite often are the gasket leaking all the way around. What we do is maybe the trick to fixing that is put a really thick coating of gasket compound on twice. Leave it for an hour or 2 in between, and then 1 more coat before you go to do it, and that softens up the gasket. It absorbs the gasket compound and it stops the leaking. So if you're in a hurry for this and you don't want to come back the next day and see if the air's dropped, you can do the same thing. You just spray it here all around. Some of these are corroded, and sometimes the hole is right through. Occasionally it can break, you know, if it gets mishandled. Whoever took this apart did a nice job. They gave it to us in good shape. They coiled it up before they shipped it and tie wrapped it down like that, and that's what you need to do. So you're just going to go along this shift cable here all the way to the end. And this one here doesn't appear to be leaking, but if it was to leak, there's a compound you can fill it in with. So if you do have a leaky one, it won't work way up here, because when this bends and flexes at the joint, this compound won't hold it, but it will repair any holes along the shift cable. And it's called Color Guard. It's made by Loctite. Comes in different colors. We use the black, and it's just a rubber coating that goes around it. But once you put the rubber coating on, when you start to pressure test it, don't bring it up to 15 pounds, because 15 pounds will start to make the rubber come off. Just test it at about 4 or 5 pounds once you've added the rubber compound on the shift cable, and it will stand up indefinitely as far as I know. The only thing that breaks this stuff down is if you leave it in the sun. It doesn't do well. And this here is inside the outdrive. I'm pretty much covered, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. So we're still at 15 pounds here. I don't see any leaks anywhere. And I'm going to, on the side of the unit, there's a screw right there, holds the bearing in. And in some cases, that screw, if the O-ring isn't seated out or you don't have a gasket compound on it, it will leak there. See a big bubble coming out. The next place a lot of people have trouble is down inside where the screws are. And also the seal area where the shaft is. Now, if you're doing a boat if the boat is, for instance, let me put it to you a different way. If the outdrive is still on the boat, it's pretty hard to pressure test it because on an 800 or a 400, because you're going to have to disconnect the shift cable and connect it up in such a fashion that the air isn't going to run through the shift cable. But if you do that, there's a couple of things. You can pressure test it while it's still on the boat, and that way you could possibly just pull a bearing carrier out if the only reason it's leaking is because of a fishing line. Now, if you've bent the prop shaft and that's the reason it's leaking, it works something like this. If it's between 2 to 4 thou and you put a new seal in, it'll last you about 50 hours. If the shaft is bent 8 to 10 thou, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to wear it out in less than a half an hour, the new seal. So at that point you need to pull the bearing carrier out. Which leaves us to another thing. If you have pressure tested it already and you're going to use a bearing carrier puller and pull the bearing carrier out to repair it while it's still on the boat, leave the pressure tester hooked up. What you can do is you can undo the 4 bolts at the bottom there, pull the bearing carrier out with a puller. I'll just quickly show you one. It would look like this. And you can pull that bearing carrier out off the boat, replace the seals, put a new O-ring in, and slide it back in. And that could possibly take care of your problem without taking this whole outdrive off the boat, which is a substantial amount of work. And that pretty much sums it up. If your boat has been in the water for a long time and is fully corroded, the chances of getting, like if you see a lot of corrosion inside the hub here, the chances of removing it when it's on the back of the boat are not too good. You normally have to use a bearing carrier. You have to heat it up with a torch. And in some cases, I tap. In some cases, I have to actually tap the holes here that are down inside. And so you'd have to run a tap down there, and you tap it 5/16 national course. Put 4 plugs in, and then we pressurize the inside of the tube so that we have the pressure from the unit pushing the bearing carrier out, as well as the pressure from the bearing carrier trying to pull it out, because some of them are really stubborn. And in some cases you need the pressure inside. You have to bring the pressure up to like 60-80 pounds. I use the bearing carrier puller, and I have to heat it with a torch on the outside to get it to break the corrosion. And on most of those cases, you need a new bearing carrier when you're finished, because they're usually so corroded on the inside that the bearing carrier is not reusable. But normally you can save the housing by just using a Scotch-Brite unit like this. So at any rate, that kind of wraps it up for the pressure testing. Just the best way to do this, rather than using the soap and everything, is just to leave it overnight if you have the time. Otherwise, the soap works fine. If there's a leak there, it would be bubbling all over the place, just like one of those kids that blow into the bubbles. You've all seen the big 1-inch bubbles. That's pretty much the way it works when there is a leak. So in my case, I'm kind of glad I don't have one to show you, because that means I can ship this unit, because the customer's not asking to have it painted, he just wanted it repaired. Actually welded and repaired. And that sums it up. If you have any other questions, give us a call. We're at sterndrive.info. It's TC Electronics, and just ask for the tech service rep if you get stuck on something. Thanks for watching.